Okay, welcome to the first broadcast of Tree Talk here at Wamanaw Lumber and Milling. On with us right now, we have Peter Simmons. He's with the Hawaii Forestry Industry Association, and Don Bryant should be joining us shortly. We want to talk today a little bit about the forestry industry and what where it is. I mean, right now, uh, things being what they are in the timber industry as a whole, we are quite a ways behind. And we'd like to see if we can come up with some solutions to bring us up to speed and actually get our forest producing. So, with that, introduce Peter Simmons. How are you today, Peter?
So far so good, Elmer. I'm a little nervous in my chair here.
Well, I feel the same way. I haven't done this before, so we uh, we just got to push forward and see what's going to happen with the industry and uh, see what obstacles we have to overcome. I
Okay.
guess is where we got to go.
If you'd like, I could give a little background and then maybe take a couple of branches off of that and see where we end
Yeah,
up.
please do. Please do.
Okay. Well, just personal background. I've been here on Hawaii Island for about 43 years now, a little more, and I've been involved in forestry from the very beginning. Uh, as soon as I arrived, I went down to the Division of Forestry and Wildlife, and I was introduced and happily introduced to Ernie Pong. Ernest Pong was a is a retired forester now for sure, but he was the I think well anyway he was very interested in koa and koa restoration, and he was also a true expert at scaling koa. He had been scaling for maybe 10 years by the time when I came, because he had been working occasionally at Campbell and Burns, and he would see the trees in the forest, and then he would go and watch and learn how they were breaking down on the mill. Um, at that time, as odd as it seems, there weren't very many people producing koa articles like we are now. Very
Mhm.
little koa furniture. There was one fellow in Hilo. Campbell and Burns sold almost everything they had to the mainland market, and the value on the stump was very low.
Well,
Uh,
that was back before the state has taken over the forestry koa industry, right?
well, this was back when Kamehameha Schools was still harvesting koa up at Keauhou. Um, so anyway, as things would turn out later, I ended up managing McCandless Ranch, who they already had a coal milling operation when I arrived. Cindy Saley and Ray Saley and the ranch, and Robbie Hind, the ranch manager, had set up a Mighty Mite, and they had some loaders, they had a swing saw, and they hired some fellows that had been working at Campbell and Burns when they left. So they were operating, um, and at the same time, kind of the Hawaiian Renaissance started happening, and more people got interested in making things. More artisans and craftsmen and millers all became interested in koa again, which was great. And I was able to pull away from the outfit, the mainland outfit that was buying all the koa at the time, and sell to. I only had local customers, with a few exceptions, in that era, and we were able to raise the value of the koa that we sold. We added a kiln and did some. I guess we sold S2S. Kept good records on the koa we harvested. Anyway, so in that era, when I was working at McCandless Ranch, um, we had a lumber grading workshop. There were a lot of producers. Ed Winkler was producing at the time. There were people on Maui producing. Steve Smith on Kauai was looking to produce, and we had a lumber grading workshop to try to unify he said, Don Bryan, I'm sorry. I guess we'll edit this. Anyway, Don was trying to get in. I don't think he'll make it.
Oh, that's all right.
But anyways,
I'm not very
first
good at
show.
technology either, so.
Yeah. So anyway, after this during the lumber grading workshop, we thought, wouldn't it be a good thing to do, since we want to unify the grading systems that we had all come up with into one system, or to at least narrow the system, if we created a forest industry association, someone to advocate for forest industry. And that's what we did. So that's like 33 years ago or so. And during that time, we've continued to exist, which is one thing. But number two, one of the things that we were advised, and we followed, and we did, was to be a broad-reaching organization. This is all local people, all Hawaiian people live here. Everybody had an interest in quite a wide range of interests, including all the forests, and including the street trees in Honolulu and Hilo and so forth. So this was a group that we thought could reach out to a broader community and both support conservation stewardship as well as commercial forestry and commercial forest stewardship. And so that's what we've been about for these last years, and it's not been easy because we were all focused on coal at one time, and then we find that our coal supply is plentiful, but for whatever reasons, the state has been reluctant to manage its coal forests since I think last time they managed for COA was probably 1974, 73. After that, they pretty much shut off the state forest for COA.
So
There's also
what's
other.
the reason for that? I mean, like we've had discussions before that
Mm,
Idaho, Oregon, and Hawaii roughly have the same forest size,
right.
right? And I
Well,
know that Oregon and Idaho makes a bundle of money off of that. The state organization does. The state of Hawaii doesn't make anything off forestry. It's just a
yeah,
cost money pit.
yeah. Well, there's a good point. I guess this is from the state has a document called the Forest Action Plan. I think it's 2016 is my memory when it was put together. So the state has a forest action plan, and one of the appendices of the action plan is actually a chronology of forestry in Hawaii. And this fellow Ron Cantarella, really intelligent guy, wrote that chronology, but also noted in that chronology that 1973, 74 is when the Endangered Species Act was passed, the Clean Water Act was passed, all those federal acts were passed. And even though the Northwest was able to withstand the shockwave of the endangered species with your spotted owl and marbled murrelet and the birds up there, Hawaii basically shut down, except for the logging that was going on at Keoho Ranch. And so when we look at the legislature, and you see the beautiful koa in the background of the governor, and sometimes you can look at they're giving a judiciary report on TV, you'll see the koa there. That was my understanding, and I stand to be proven wrong in this, but I believe that was coming from Laupahoehoe area of the Hilo Forest Reserve, and that was to be a substantial industry. I mean, if you look at the record, the question wasn't, should there be one like we're sitting here today? It was how big. They'd done a lot of forestry work, a lot of inventory work, very serious about it. And really, here's a reflection of it. The lands above Sugar, if you're thinking about, and I know this island the best, so I'm just going to I'm oriented toward Hawaii Island. But if you look at the lands above Sugar, they are zoned conservation. That's true. Similar to the forest reserves. But if you look closer and you say, well, what kind of conservation? Because there's several different types. One is conservation P. That's the one that's preserve rare plants, rare animals, intact native ecosystems or nearly intact ecosystems. I think that's about a quarter of the conservation zone land. But by and large, the largest portion of the conservation zone lands are in the conservation subzone R for resource. And somewhere along the line, this was done in these subzones were set up in the 60s, and they set up the subzone R to be used by people. And the two areas of use for this subzone are recreation, and getting in, and not only just hunting, but including hunting, including cultural restoration and so forth, and cultural gathering, but also commercial forestry. Okay, I was shocked when I found that out. I found that out after my career by 10 years.
Well, yeah, and I think ever since like the '70s, that a lot of the environmentalists have pushed in their way into the Forestry Service and kind of used the conservation as a way to just lock
Yeah,
things away.
yeah, I think that's true. And just in terms of the sway of
One second.
yeah.
Sorry, I forgot to turn my phone down.
I keep mine so I can hear it ring, but I never get it, and no one seems to call. But anyway, um, so I mean, I think the events of the mainland, looking at, like I said, the spotted owl and the marbled murrelet, those things that was real. That really hurt all the national forests. Well, Hawaii found resources from the federal government, matching funds to manage its rare elements, but not really so much its more common elements. And so the easier route, I guess, and changing public opinion was, to stay away from any controversy about endangered plants or animals and concentrate on the restoration in the conservation P areas, or where the rare animals and plants are. I think that was probably a pivot that needed to happen, but not as big. If you look at what they intended in the 60s, it wasn't to take away land from sugar. It wasn't to take away land from watershed. It was to add land for the people, for the resources of the people, including recreation, which is a pretty broad category, and then including forestry, which is also a broad category. So looking at it with today's eyes, and in the 60s, there was a pretty rough bunch of foresters. I can't say they were Mr. and Ms. Sensitive in terms of everything, but they knew how forests grew, and they had good recommendations. But what we might look at today in some of these landscapes would be taking care of the weeds problem, the invasive weeds that have grown into these forests, and using the forest value themselves to improve the forest floor and improve the canopy. Unfortunately,
Well,
this is
a lot of the problems too what they have with the invasive species is they were introduced by the state.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And we're all in. I was looking at strawberry guava because that's kind of one of the bigger bad boy issues, and you know, coming in 1825, okay, it got here, you know.
Yeah,
But the question
but
is,
there's
what
a
are we
lot
going to?
more recent things
Oh yeah,
that been introduced, just
oh yeah,
one after
yeah, yeah,
another. And
absolutely. But my
I
point
think
is,
my opinion is if it doesn't have a key so that you can turn it off, you probably shouldn't introduce it if it's not
yeah,
here already.
it's really sad how the globalization, I mean, 100 years ago, everybody, or more, 125 years ago, everybody wanted to have a sample of everything in the world.
Mhm.
and a
Well,
lot of it.
I mean, as far as forestry is, we have the perfect petri dish right here,
Yes, we do.
right? We have the perfect petri dish for forestry, and it. I don't know what the hell is going on, but nobody's using it properly. They
Well,
just spit
here's
in the dish and walked away, see what's going to grow. It looks like.
here's part of the issue. I said before, like in the 70s, we took this pivot away from commercial forestry and over toward forestry conservation stewardship, for right or wrong. That was money that was available, and the state could get matching funds. But what I read in this report that I mentioned, the forestry that the state's DLNR's forest action plan, was that this state has like 800, almost 900,000 acres of state forest. Okay. And that puts it at, I think it was 12th, maybe 13th or 14th in terms of state lands that were forested in the United States. But they are 48th in terms of funding. 48th.
Which
Holy.
really doesn't make any sense because if you actually did proper forestry management, you're going to pull more value out of the forest than you're going to spend if it's
And I
done
think
properly.
Elmer, I think that's the connection that we lost. That when the Endangered Species Act was passed, there were a couple of lawsuits. The lawsuits were, you know, they're real. They shut down operations, and I think from the Division of Forestry side, not to speak for them, they wanted to avoid conflict. And so like if we even, and I was just only talking about these lands that were above the sugar fields, where now we've got the strawberry guava, the little red fire ant and rod. Okay. And it's smothering this low elevation Ohiakoa forest. But the same thing, you look at the same attitude, and it percolates from doing good in this conservation R area into all of the plantings that the state has done as well, because it's an attitude. I believe the state has forgotten what it knew in the 1960s, and hasn't communicated well enough with its colleagues on the mainland to know that there is resource value that can be turned into better management. It doesn't, it's another part of the stream that can help. And it's so frustrating for me now to be trying to help the state earn or have better revenue to take better care of the things that I love, but they don't seem to be keen on acting.
Yes, no, nobody wants to do anything, and my personal feeling is that is the entire reason for privatizing the Forest Service. Privatize it
Well,
because
I think, in a way, that might not be the most popular way of putting it, but that's true. And if,
it's
and if
probably
it
not
was,
the and I don't have a lot of fancy words, never have. I just tell people what I think. Um, and the truth of it is, I had a lady ask me the other day, we were talking about it, and she's like, well, you can get all these grant monies and this and that and the other thing. And I said, well, what I'm trying to do here is make it sustainable. This place has to work on its own. We don't go to the bank. We don't go to the state. We don't go to the federal government. We go out in the yard, we break our butts, we sweat, we bleed, and we make value.
right.
And it takes months to get that money back.
Yeah.
But if you keep doing it day after day after day, it's sustainable, right?
Yeah. I
I don't
agree.
have
I
to
mean,
worry about how am I going to pay the bank. I don't owe the bank. I don't owe them, so I don't have to pay them.
but on the idea, which I think is a good one, of you said privatizing, which is that is the case, but to make it more understandable, the idea that you could lease a portion of the state, that's done all the time. The idea that you could license to do good things in the forest areas, that's certainly not a big reach. And even now, there's a bill in the ledge, I forget the number, but Lorraine Inouye, Senator Inouye, introduced a bill that would allow regular people to get a license to grow and care for and eventually harvest koa and whatever in on state land.
And
I think that is
I
a
think
good
that's an
way.
outstanding idea.
Yeah, I think that is a good way to get private money to help manage a public resource.
Mhm.
You know,
Well,
uh,
yeah. Well, like the place up the road here, DLNR came in and confiscated the place. They were up there. The old man was up there growing those little trees, bonsai trees. He had some of the most expensive bonsai trees there are, right? And they at 90 years old, they come and throw them out on the street in the middle of a pandemic. And
yeah,
now, a year later, nothing up there has happened except for the albizia trees are taking over. That's
yeah,
it. That's the only thing that's happened out of that whole thing.
yeah.
And there's some old people folks on the street.
That's a sad tale. In terms of the time we're in and what hopefully what we can do, but through your initiative and through the initiative of the Forest Industry Association, is try to focus our legislators and our leaders on what are the real possibilities. I think I really want to give credit to DOFA and DLNR. They've been given a tough hand over the years, and they have learned to really do well by the federal system that they mine. I mean, they are grant getters. They spread that grant money into areas that are of everybody's interest. But now here we are, and we say we have something to offer. We're not, like you said, we're not here to take something from you. We're here to offer a way of improving the people's resources,
Yeah,
and we just need to
it's
find.
better for the state for privatization in this way. They don't have to do anything, and they still get paid. Right?
Well,
All they got to do is go out, mark some trees with some paint, and get the hell out of the way, and
well,
then they get paid. Right? They can
yeah.
mark trees,
Unfortunately,
mark plants. Don't touch this. Go over here. Don't go over there.
well, like you were saying, Elmer, up in the Northwest and I'm familiar with Upper Peninsula Michigan forestry and Wisconsin forestry, and there's a whole infrastructure of intellect that knows how to do things within the population. The foresters there know how to scale trees. They know how to
Mhm.
scale logs. I don't know that we have a forester in Hawaii at DOFA that's ever scaled. Maybe they do. I shouldn't say that, but it's at a
That's
very.
in their job description.
What's that?
I said that's in their job description.
Yeah, but
You
if
know
you
what I
don't
do with
practice
people
it,
that I employ that can't perform the duties that are in their job description?
well, yeah,
I
I,
train
I
them to
feel
do
for
it,
'em.
and if they can't do it, they need to go, and we'll find somebody that does.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, but the point is that we don't have like the fellow that trained me to scale. When I worked at McCandless, I think we cut 1 million board feet of koa in the 5 years that I was there.
Hmm.
So that meant I went out in the woods and I picked the trees, and along with contractors and sometimes with Ernie Pung, who was working initially for the state, but then he retired. And so I got to walk in the shadow of someone who really knew, and try to learn from him. Who's doing that now? And so
I only know a couple of people that can even do that. Then
yeah,
I get calls from people wanting to know how do you figure out how many trees are in an acre? Well, it's not that difficult.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
explain to
So,
them how to do it.
but it's partly just understanding, and some of it's in the just in the common understanding of local folks. On this island, when we planted a tree farm of Eucalyptus grandis, I mean, people were up in arms about all kinds of things, but really, even when they harvested 22 shiploads, I'm talking shiploads now, there were no complaints. How can that be? But the fact is that they had a clean operation. They were tidy. They were courteous on the road. They'd pull over. They allowed people to pass, and they were good operators in the forest.
Hmm.
Well, a lot of folks don't understand that that can happen, and that's part of kind of what we have to redo and help teach. It's not an easy. It's not easy. I mean, you're from a state, and I'm from Wisconsin originally. People were used to what logging was.
Yeah.
They knew somebody in the business. That's not the case much anymore.
Well, it was like that thing I told you where they wanted to put in a $6 million traffic light up there uh, because of the logging trucks. And
Yeah,
they're all the same trucks. It doesn't matter what the freight is, it's all the same trucks.
yeah, that's a good
You're
point.
just spending money on nonsense to put more obstacles in the way.
So, I guess we got about a couple of minutes left to 5. Are we going till whenever? Or...
Yeah, it's up to however you want, as long as you want to talk.
Yeah. Well, in my own opinion, I believe we're into a different era, and we'll see. With this Honua Ola project here, capability of really cleaning up some forests and getting rid of some forest debris, some treetops, that'd be really useful. And that if you could sell the bottom of the tree, it's a lot easier to sell than the whole tree. You can
Yep.
sell the good logs, and they're interested in that. If we can make it through the Public Utilities Commission, again, here's a project that Tommy Kraft started with the Sea Brewer Bioenergy Company 40 something years ago. All of the governors up until now have been in favor of this project. And now we got a PUC issue at the last second. I hope we get through it. But they've already built the
I
plant.
think they will. People just need to put more pressure on the PUC
I
because
sure hope
this
so.
is ridiculous.
If you go and see this plant, it's a thing of beauty. And it would hydrate. It would allow the utilization of the wood, the remaining wood, in a much better way. They can even take strawberry. We think they can take strawberry guava and waste. Really, woody waste. Weedy waste wood.
Yeah, I don't see why not. I mean, if you get the right mix, you got the right BTUs feeding the plant constantly, it
Yeah,
shouldn't be that big of a deal.
yeah. So, and to us, I think at HFIA, the healthy and productive forest initiative is really the guiding force now. And so, whether that forest is a planted forest on Oahu, whether it's a pure pristine forest, we know what productivity means. It's not only dollars and cents and cutting things down. We know what healthy looks like, and we don't
Hmm.
have to. And that's just a fact. You don't have to be upset with DOFA or us. It's all of us. It's our forest. And we, over the years, have underfunded and maybe not given them good directions. But now we want to. We want a
Well, I mean,
straightforward.
again, sometimes they say they're underfunded, and then I look at it and well, you're supposed to have all this equipment and all these things by law, and you buy 1,000 acres in the middle of central Oahu to plant to
Yeah,
make a garden. Why? What is the Forest Service doing in making gardens? They shouldn't
yeah.
be. They should be doing
No,
their job, spending the
yeah.
money on what they're supposed to be spending it on,
Well, they
not
got,
buying more property.
I think the government's a crazy thing with good intentions that pave the way to bad places.
Yeah. Well, once it's really easy to do the easy work to
Yeah,
snuggle up and suckle on the tit, right? But if
right.
you have to go hunt your own food, it makes a big difference, right?
No, Elmer,
You
I
learn
think
a
that
lot more.
I get the sense that although I think the people there are decent people, but that they've lost touch with the people's forest. That the sense of these forests are for the people. Forests are for industry. These forests are create opportunities and income and value. And instead, they've kind of gone away where the money was, and they've just abandoned a lot of acres of forest. And they show it. We have now on the other side of we have degrading forests now. We're losing value. So how we can achieve, a more sensible approach to the people's forest is the big question.
Yeah. Well, both of us realize that there's actually millions of board feet of koa laying on the ground,
Oh,
rotting,
oh,
right?
terrible.
Uh, but they're saying, oh, well, their crew's got to go in and do it. But if you look at the price list that the state has out, they want $11 a board foot for decking. That's their published price.
Yeah.
That is something like 12,000 times more than any mainland operation. How is
Yeah.
that possible?
Well, I think we're gonna have to anyway. Yeah, I agree with you. I got
It
nothing
just
to
it just proves to me that
say.
whoever is writing this stuff down doesn't have a clue what they're talking
Yeah.
about, and they're
And
in
that,
charge.
yeah, and we need to be able to do better at reaching them, and I think we will. But Elmer, I'm going to have to cut out now. I'm good for a half an hour, but we're
No
going to
worries.
now. One thing I wouldn't
I
want to.
appreciate it. It's a good start. Possibly, I'd like to do it in like 3 sections.
Okay,
So maybe 2 weeks we'll do it again.
sure, but I want to show you something.
Uh,
You see those doors behind me there?
yeah.
Okay, those are Kauri,
Would
Kauri, and I just want to show you. I got some chops because I made those. I made the doors in the house. So I
nice.
know from the cutting. I never did it on a big scale. I did the Mighty Mite scale, you know, but I would have been a
It's all
woodworker
the same thing. It's just bigger equipment.
if I'd been any good at it. I would have been a woodworker.
Well, I didn't have a choice. I grew up as a little kid involved in this, and
Yeah.
either you did it or you got lickings and you didn't eat. So either do your chores, do what you're told, or it's not going to go well. And
I
it
got
actually turned out
it.
well for me because I learned a lot.
Yeah, that's how I was taught too.
Yeah.
So I got a question for you. What in the background behind you? What do you have there? What kind of wood is that? Are they pieces of?
Okay, so the seals, this yard is by Dodge. So we got the seals, we got the hula dancer here. Let's see if I can.
Ah, cool.
That was Monkey Pod. This is Monkey Pod. Then over here, there's a taco by the artist Christian Bendo. And we got a bunch of different artists in here, a bunch of different local types of wood. We have koa tables, Cuban mahogany, mango. Just we're trying to build out of all the species here to show people what
Cool.
the trees can be, right?
Really good.
And some people don't believe us, but we do talk tree. We actually speak to them, and they
Yeah.
will tell us what they want to be and what they don't want to be. So,
Okay. Well, I'm gonna have to watch you when we have a few drinks. So. Okay.
well, when you get up here, we'll go out and have a few drinks.
Okay. I'll make sure Don gets on next time.
All righty.
I'll make sure Don gets on next time.
Okay. Yeah. That'd be great. And like I said, we'll try to keep the format as simple as possible.
Okay.
Because I get confused easy.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Take care.
But you have a good day, Peter.
You too.
We'll
Take care.
see you soon.
Okay. Bye.
Thanks.
Yep.
Bye. So that was our first episode of Tree Talk here at Wymanaw Lumber and Milling. I hope you enjoyed it. hope you got some information. And if you have any questions or comments, please get them to us. But good, bad, indifferent, it doesn't matter to me. I don't get offended easily. So we'll be up probably in 2 weeks. 2 weeks Monday, about 4:30. We'll have our next episode. I appreciate y'all joining us, and have a good evening.